talk to you about something called, there's a designation called API architect, which is becoming very prevalent in a lot of companies. So previously you used to have SOA architects, used to have solution architects and so on. So, but these days you see microservices architect, API architect, and so on. So this whole thing is based on a philosophy called the need for more and more people to open up their interfaces and the data that was lying underneath the labyrinth of a lot of companies today is of paramount importance because of this term called API economy. So API economy essentially means that expose your APIs which are hidden deep in your architecture to the outside world so that you can effectively do business with them. So typically there are a lot of APIs that were earlier the old world philosophy was if you are the owner of a lot of data, then you end up being the owner of the game, or you cash in a lot in the economy in the long run. But these days, the more decentralized you are, the better for you. Facebook is the largest aggregator of social media posts, but it does not own any post or any content. Uber owns a lot of, Uber is the largest taxi provider but doesn't own a single taxi on its name. Similarly, Airbnb rents out a lot of hotels and stuff like that, places to stay, not exactly hotels, but they don't own any of the persons who are actually servicing the apartments, or they don't own a single real estate for that matter. And the Hilton group of hotels, which owns a lot of property over the last 40 years, their market valuation a couple of years was 18 billion, and Airbnb not owning a single piece of real estate and an employee to its account was valued at 40 billion around 3 to 4 years ago. So now the valuation numbers must have gone really up. So today we're going to be talking about this story about why APIs are very important in your transformation journeys. And if you look at the fintech movement, there is open banking, open APIs, open interfaces. So a lot of those kind of talks are happening at industry events and incubators and startup accelerators, if you see. So that is the place wherein you are actually opening up your interfaces. So these days, the CEO or the CIO typically has this worry, what in my world is a API that I can potentially expose to my value chain and gain from it. So if you look at this thing, there's a whole concept of innovating at the intersections, or there's a lot of fun at the intersections if you were to call it that way. So actually Jeff Bezos created this and coined this. He wrote a mail actually. Jeff Bezos wrote a mail to his employees saying that everything in Amazon needs to be written like an interface, and everything has to be exposed as loosely coupled as an interface or an API, so that anybody can call it. So the entire AWS stack, which was essentially written to support the AWS business, typically the retail business, became so good in their architecture that they actually opened up that whole thing. And now AWS, the cloud stack and the AWS stack, which helps you with infra PaaS, SaaS, and typically infrastructure as a service, but platform as a service kind of solutions, are far outnumbering the revenue numbers than their retail business in the last couple of years. So why is this surge in the term API or API economy? So it was because of the vision of the founder of Amazon, that is Jeff Bezos. So he actually said he could envisage a long-term need for this fact that everything, if it's opened up like an API, like an interface which is loosely coupled and not tied to your architecture or your solution, you could potentially do business at a lot of interface points and capitalize on the economy. So typically, people who have actually exploited the fun at the intersections or actually innovated at the intersections are people like Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg. So Steve Jobs actually combined design Plus, he combined hardware technology and created artistic hardware. People, earlier, hardware used to be kept in a nondescript location in a server room, and that was the last thing that people wanted to touch or feel. But he made hardware so sophisticated and elegant that people wanted to own it like furniture in their room, and like a piece of art. So that's what he transformed by combining design and technology together. Mark Zuckerberg, for instance, he combined social and technology together, and he innovated an entire social platform where people could mingle and do business, become friends, and exchange ideas and so on. So that's the power of APIs, for that matter. So you can actually discover a lot of blue oceans around these APIs. Typically, that you can actually create some entirely new market segments and disrupt competition, make competition irrelevant. So, for instance, if you see companies like Make My Trip, Clear Trip, Go IB, these companies are actually innovating. They have actually explored a lot of value chain. Interfaces across banking, payment systems, rental companies, car companies, food companies, travel companies, and airlines industry, rail industry, bus industry. So they've actually merged. They're playing at the confluence of all of these industry segments. So by effectively exposing your APIs, you can actually tend to gain on this entire value chain. So it's a very important concept to actually be there. And even in the fintech world, by exposing your APIs these days, companies are providing non-bankers to lower their barrier of entry to become a banking provider by saying, okay, here is my set of APIs, you set up a bank on the fly, and you don't have to worry about the infrastructure, or you don't have to worry about the IT support and all of that rigmarole. So we are going to provide you these set of APIs, and you could pay us an annual license fee based on the usage that you come with, the number of users who are on your platform, and who effectively use your solutions. So that is the power of API economy. So it all started with Jeff Bezos sending out that mail to his employees, and the funny part was the thing why it became such a big phenomenon for AWS is the last line of his mail said, if you're not doing this in your company, you could be potentially out. So that was the last statement, which actually triggered a lot of people to think loosely coupled interfaces, decoupled interfaces, and make this API thing a big success. So now, if you were to see that API is being exploited by both private and public partners, so if you have governments like in Singapore, South Korea, and Spain, Melbourne, and of course back here in Bangalore, Karnataka, government has actually opened up APIs when people can actually look up the APIs and figure out, okay, what are my essential services like. So if I've got an Aadhaar card, what kind of subsidy am I eligible for? What is the things that I could get based on my Aadhaar card. So is it health care, is it pension, is it e-Praman, is it passport seva, is it e-seva, and a whole lot of those LPG subsidies. So basically a whole lot of these things are possible by actually a company looking at or opening up their interfaces, and so there's a lot that could be done on the APIs. So the whole microservices movement has pushed that envelope further by making it easy for people to look everything in terms of APIs or small tiny services, and which is an improvement from the service-oriented architecture days wherein it was componentized and stuff like that. So it's become more macro at the level of an API wherein you could encash on connecting to different people and make things work. So This is potentially a thing that a lot of companies that are in transformation need to look up and opening up their entire services like APIs. And if you really do that, you tend to win in the big picture, because everything is becoming decentralized and federated. So basically, if you got an API that talks to uh, things across the board, then all the better. So actually, uh, and I ended up writing a recent white paper on this, which got published in the MDI conference at Gurgaon, conducted jointly by the Open Group, and it's published as a part of the book as well. So I think this is a story that many companies cannot afford to ignore. That is the API part of it. So you need to open up your interfaces to turn your organization around. So no transition today is complete without opening up your interfaces. So be it part of some legacy stack, which is service-oriented architecture, where also APIs are quite important, or if you're doing entirely a greenfield from the scratch operations freshly, then if you're doing microservices as well, APIs play a huge role in enabling you to do the transformation. So this is about the API story. So yeah, stay tuned for more such updates.